All right, as I mentioned, today's webinar is going to be consisting of our fundraising reports, and we're going to complete our beginners series with our final fundraising training. So yesterday we went ahead and covered our fundraising campaign structure, segments, and so forth, along with the payments. So today we'll discover how to run some reports that will provide valuable insight into your contributions. So pretty much what I'm going to go ahead and cover today are going to be the fundraising reports, campaign reports, donor reports, and just talk a little bit about the available contribution reports that are within your data bank. So to go ahead and get started, um, usually it's the case that you do want to have a selection of contacts in mind, specifically when we are talking, with our fundraising report. So our fundraising report will give you information about contacts that have made a contribution, the type of campaign associated towards that contribution. So it really depends on how and what type of data you want to go ahead and report on. In this particular case, I could go ahead and select, um, for example, anyone that has made a contribution within the year of 2019. Otherwise, if it was ever the case that I just wanted to view all the contact records that have ever made a contribution, not caring about the campaign or the segment associated or the date, all I can do is just click find, and it will go ahead and search for all of the contacts within my data bank that have ever made a contribution at any point in time. Then kind of backtracking, if it's the case that I do want to go ahead and be a little bit more specific in regards to the search and the type of selection of contacts I want to have, I can go ahead and select via campaign, choose any particular segments attributed to that campaign. And the way that you would choose the segments would be, okay, so I have the web donations campaign. I want to choose segments that exist within this particular campaign. So you can go ahead and decide which ones are those. In this particular case, I'm just going to go ahead and search for contact records that have made a contribution for the year 2019. Again, this is a test database, so the number that I will be selecting will definitely not be the same number that your organization may have, as it is, test records and no data is accurate at all. So we're going to go ahead and click find. And it looks like I only have 2 contact records that have made a contribution with 2019. So let me just go back and make sure that the selection, okay, so what it did is it did go ahead and apply that particular segment. So because I know I have a little bit more than 2 for that particular time frame, I'm just going to go ahead and redo this one more time. I think it'll be like 8 contact records, if I'm not mistaken. But at least if we can go ahead and work with that data a little bit more than just the 2. So new, any campaign, click find. It should go ahead and overwrite my current search. So it went from 2 to 6 contacts. So now that we have our selection, we can go ahead and just click on reports. And by default, you'll automatically get to the All tab for where all the reports are being shown. Usually, uh, just to make it a little bit cleaner, I just go to the Contribution tab. Depending on your organization, again, the terminology may be a little bit different. So it could be the case that it's gift tab, etc. So depending on the terminology your organization may use, it may be a little bit different. So now that we have come across this page, we see all the fundraising reports associated to our data bank. There may be some in yours particular case that may be custom made, um, but for in general, these are all the type of contribution reports that exist for all database users across all organizations. So now that we have this, we're going to focus on our fundraising roster first, and we're going to click View. So the fundraising roster will list your contacts and their contributions. So the thing about this particular report is that you can control which contact and contribution fields display on your report and have up to 3 sorting levels. So I can go ahead and select the information I want to include. Um, as a rule of thumb, and as I say as a rule of thumb because the contact roster will give you the option to always include this type of information. And so that's going to be the largest contribution, the date, the amount, and so forth. So that's going to be something similar that you will see in another type of report. But the beautiful thing about the fundraising roster itself is that you can include the contribution fields that you'd like to report on. Again, so here you can go ahead and decide, okay, I just want to show all contributions. Otherwise, right now, because we said, okay, I search for contributions that were made from January 1st, 2019, all the way to December 31st, 2019, I want to make sure I list that particular date. Otherwise, I could go ahead and enter here. We have a couple of different options. And we scroll down. So you can go ahead and enter the detailed information rather than just being able to view the total. So date, amount, campaign name, and we'll just do segment description. I know a lot of the times it's the case that we input contribution notes within our contribution forms. If you are ever wondering like how to obtain a copy of those notes, you would want to go ahead and select the contribution note, and then it will go ahead and allow you to view that particular contribution note. Here you have the option to decide whether you just want to view it on your screen or download it. Right here it says downloadable text file, but in my particular case, when I go ahead and click downloadable, it just automatically saves the document, and I can go ahead and open it in my Excel format. So it'll automatically detect that particular file and just view it within my Excel program. So right now I'm just viewing in screen, and this is the exact same way that your Excel program or other similar programs that does, this same type of data would render it and handle it. So I have my ID, my name, information, the personal information that I decided to include, the date of the contribution, the amount, the campaign name, the segment description, and the contribution note. So if it's one ticket, okay, just want to make sure it's one ticket. if it's, a plan membership, individual membership, and so forth. So it goes ahead and displays the data that I'm looking for. So I can go ahead and, if I'm doing it in Excel, save it, report on it, and do anything in that regards. Otherwise, I can go back to my roster setup and include any additional information that I may be looking for. And then going back to our reports page, let's go back. We're going to go ahead and take a look at the campaign reports. So we have a couple of them, right? We have a campaign detail and a campaign summary. The campaign detail report will provide statistics on contributions and response rates for one specific campaign. So let me go ahead and say I want to do all, but I don't know how much data that will be. So let's try. And then and we can go ahead and leave the amounts blank if we want to include all amounts. Otherwise, if you just wanted to show a campaign detail based upon donations that were over $1,000 or over $500, you can go ahead and enter it there. And then we can go ahead and click view. And so right now, because we do have more than one, we just go ahead and click on the different campaigns. In this particular case, we are looking at the donation campaign and we see the different segments. So pretty much what it provides us is just a glimpse, an idea of, the type of data that we can gather from the campaigns that we have created. So again, if you create different kinds of campaigns throughout the year and you want to report and view how each of those campaigns, this would just be the best way of doing that, just because it does provide, again, pretty much the same information that you would see within the campaigns module, but instead of clicking back and going back to each one individually, you can just find them all in one place. So again, this is what the campaign detail report shows you. Then we have the specific campaign summary reports. So going back, and so this particular one is going to go ahead and show us information on multiple campaigns. So active campaigns, we want to go ahead and leave it blank. We can go ahead and do that. Otherwise, since we have been looking at this same example, we're just going to enter the dates for 2019. And then here we can just have, again, a quick overview of our overall donations associated for these campaigns for that particular time frame that we provided. Obviously, it's the case that Summer 2016 campaign had a donation at some point in time in that 2019 year. This data, again, may not reflect true data, so just make sure that you kind of keep that in mind. But again, we just have a total overview of these campaign summary information. And then what we're going to go ahead and take a look next are going to be the donor reports. So going back. All right. And we can go ahead and look at a donor base profile. So our donor base profile, I believe is down here. Oh, there we go. Again, this particular report will just give you a snapshot of giving trends, and it pretty much reports on the largest gift and lapse rates. So here we do have a heat map turned on, so that's why you see that they are lighter scales of green versus darker scales of green. So here we see, from 2020 all the way to 2012, which year had the most contribution amounts along, with the type of contribution dollar amount associated to that number of donors. If I want to turn it off, I can just go ahead and click on the heat map to disable it. If I want to turn it back on, I can go ahead and turn it back on. So another thing to keep in mind is that you can go ahead and clear your current selection if you just want to view an overview of all of your contributions. Otherwise, again, this is just the donor base profile report where you can just go ahead and view not any kind of specific campaign information, but rather just a whole count of total contributions throughout the years. And then going to go back to reports. And then we're going to go back to contribution. And then we're going to go ahead and look at the donor recognition. So the donor recognition report will rank your contacts by the total of their contributions within the given date range. So again, we're just going to focus on 2019. And then in this case, I can just do my top 3 donors and click view. Obviously, if you had, larger intervals of contributions, you would want to go ahead and probably segment via that way. But in this particular case, I just want to show the top 3, and I believe it was out of 6 from our current selection from January 1st to December 31st of 2019. And we see that these were the top 3. So this would come in handy if it was the case that, you wanted to send them like a special thank you note or thank you gift, towards the end of the year, and say, hey, we recognize you as one of our top donors and appreciate, all the contributions, so etc. So you could go ahead and use this as a easy way to go ahead and target individuals that you or you're gonna or you and your organization may highly appreciate, and mark them as your active selection, send them a power mail, etc. So then the last particular donor report that we're going to go ahead and take a look at is going to be the, let me go ahead and select it, the Libent. So I call it Libent to call it in short, but it's called the last year but not this year report. So this particular report will show contacts who have given in the last 24 months but not given in the past 12 months, right? So H&R Brush Foundation has given in 2018, but has not given, within the last 24 months. Again, we have to take in consideration the time frame that we are in now, or the date that we are at now. So for example, today is April 22nd, 2020. So it's going to take into consideration that specific time frame and attribute it to what we have here. So it's not going to take a look like a particular fiscal year, so say 2019. It's going to go ahead and use the 24 months and the 12 months as presently time shows. So I can go ahead and download this report or make it into a selection, depending it is what I want to do. And then we have two reports that we can go ahead and just touch base on, and that's going to be the contribution detail report, which like will which will which will provide your contributions along with additional filtering options. So here we have again our beginning date, ending date. So in this particular report, it does give you a little quick of a snippet saying you do want to make sure you associate a time frame of 2 years or less. Again, depending on how much contributions you do have, just because it could be a lot, and it might time out, and it just will not provide the best experience. So you can go ahead and sort up to however detail you want it. So if you just want to see credit card as a payment method, you can go ahead and do that. Right now I'm just going to go ahead and click view, and I don't want to download it. I just want to view it on screen, because I know that one, there's not many contributions for the specific 6 uh, contacts that we recently have selected. So here we go ahead and get filtered by the date. So it starts off from February, then goes ahead and increments it. And then again, then the contact information along with the contribution information and the dollar amount. So I can decide if I want to go ahead and download it or make it into a selection, which technically, because we already had them selected, we already knew that they're part of our selection. And then last but not least, we are going to take a look at the contribution trend report. And that contribution trend report will go ahead and analyze your contributions along with reoccurring contribution trends. And you can go ahead and filter, group all this data depending on how you want to go ahead and report it. So I'm going to go ahead and do this again. And then also, if you do have any questions, this would be a good time to start entering in the chat box, as we will be having time towards the end to go ahead and um, view those and answer those questions. So we're going to go ahead and click view. And so now that we went ahead and entered this information, again, our date range for this contribution trend report was from January 1st to December 31st, 2019, with a minimum contribution of $1. It seems pretty reasonable. And so here we have the campaign name, and then here we have the contribution detail report for that specific cell, and that's going to be like the total dollar amount that was gathered in that particular month. So if it's the case that you are running special events throughout the year and you want to see an overview of your data and see if that makes a big difference, or if it's pretty much making everything a little bit more even, then this would be the best way. So here you have a couple of different things that you can do. You can go ahead and show totals. So here I click on this little icon, and it gives me this little chart of that particular campaign. Otherwise, I have the option to share the show totals. So I have the option to go ahead and share this. So if I right click, I can go ahead and click save image as, or I can go ahead and do copy image if it's the case that I want to go ahead and just copy it into an email and so forth. Otherwise, you have the option to go ahead and download it and send it to anyone and report on it as it may be needed. So this does conclude the end of our fundraising reports overview. Again, there are quite some other ones that we didn't quite touch base on today. But for the most part, those were the most important ones. Otherwise, the one thing to take away from today's webinar, as well as, aside from being able to report on your contributions, when it comes down to fundraising, if it's ever the case that you know someone made a donation or just on a periodic basis, I would recommend to take a look at your orphan contributions. So the orphan contributions will show contributions that were made, but are not necessarily in your payments section and are not within that particular contact record. In this particular case, I click on the dollar amount of that contribution and attribute that specific segment that needs to be attributed to that donation. And it has to be done in order for that payment to get processed and get posted and be shown within that contact record. So again, that would be one of the main takeaways for today's webinar. And we can go ahead and answer any questions.